Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. Welcome back, listeners. My next guest has spent nearly 2 decades at H.I.G Capital, one of the largest private equity firms in the world, managing $74 billion in assets. His title is CTO, but the job is more interesting than just that. Luis Suarez doesn't just run technology for the $74 billion firm. He also walks into every company H.I.G acquires and evaluates the tech team from the inside. He has seen what high-performing teams look like up close. He has also seen what gets missed during due diligence, the things that don't show up in a deck, but show up fast once you own the company. That perspective sitting at the intersection of private equity and technology leadership is not something you hear on a lot of podcasts about hiring, and that's exactly why I wanted to have him on. What makes Luis the right guest for this show specifically is his answer to a question every business leader faces. How do you build a tech team that can actually scale when you don't have a tech company's budget or brand name? He's lived that problem for the last 2 decades. Luis, welcome to Higher Learning. How you doing?
Thank you, Oz. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have such an interesting background. You do so much in the community. You've been with your company for 20 years. Obviously, the organization is growing. You play a central role, it seems like, in a lot of that growth. But I want to start here. So you're Chief Technology Officer at H.I.G Capital. I think I already explained in the intro why it's a little bit different. But let's go even further back. Let's figure out how you first got into technology. Was this a lifelong passion? Were you breaking apart, your Atari or your Nintendo 8-bit back in the day and we're putting it back together? How'd you get technology?
Close. It wasn't Atari, but yeah, my first computer was a Commodore 64. So I'm dating myself with it, but it's been a lifelong passion, technology in every sense of the word. I really, it's one of those things that I tell people when they ask me what to recommend for an industry, whether it's their kids, their brothers, and I said, you got to find something you're passionate about, and that you love and enjoy. And I drive my house crazy by constantly automating things at home and bringing in new technology, but I enjoy it at work and I love it at home. And it's sort of just part of my DNA, part of my life.
I love that. I heard an interesting definition of technology recently. Technology is something new and a new way of doing things that we haven't ultimately figured out. And when figured out its full capability, full maximum potential. What I mean by that is like at some point, right, the car was considered new technology, right? And now everything that goes into the car and the software we build in the car, that's considered the technology. And now AI is the technology. And previously it was the cotton gin, the printing press, and these different things. Like what technology is and what it looks and feels like there's a lot of times dependent on the era you grew up in or where you're at. And so we are in one of the most innovative, highest curve ever from a technology perspective. We're all familiar with Moore's Law. It seems like that's, doubling and tripling at the rates that we know now. And you've been at H.I.G Capital for a lot of what I would say is really the advent of the internet, the advent of the cloud. Now we're in the AI world. You've been there for over 2 decades. So I'm just interested, the company has to have shifted and evolved over this same amount of time. What kept you at the company as long as it has? And I have to imagine it's new challenge, new excitement, new purpose. Has that evolved over the time you've been there?
Yeah. So the really important thing that really has kept me at H.I.G is we still have an entrepreneurial kind of DNA that we've managed to keep. And so we're constantly changing. We're constantly not reinventing ourselves, but really reimagining what H.I.G is in terms of the new world. It's constantly. I mean, if you talk about the time period you talk about, we went through a once in a lifetime event, a pandemic, and that shifted a lot of companies. A lot of companies folded from it. A lot of companies wilted. we took it as an opportunity to reimagine how our people operate. We went from a full 5 days a week, everybody's in the office organization to now one that is hybrid. And technology was just a tool to allow us to do that. And so it's been that constant evolution, whether it's been the march to the cloud, the pandemic that forced us to really rethink ourselves, right? I always really believe in don't let a crisis go to waste. And we really took advantage of that. And now with AI, I mean, we're literally getting new tools. It seems like every hour, every day on this, whatever platform you're on, you talk about it. And as soon as the call's over, you check the latest bulletin and you're like, oh, I just said we couldn't do that. And now this feature came out and we can do this. That's exciting. That's not a problem. That's not a threat to me. That's exciting. That really allows technology to be that real business enabler, business shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unprecedented times. Like if we look at today in the news, like I'm a big co-work, right? I've been using, I moved over from OpenAI and ChatGPT probably about 4 or 5 months ago. Had really enjoyed using the co-work suite, and literally every other day there's I've never seen a company have such product releases and feature releases and different things that are happening. It's just almost dizzy to keep up with. And it's one of the reasons why, they've got this 10x over year growth from an AI perspective, because they're just shipping something new at all times. And fundamentally, a lot of it works really well and changes the way that you work. And so it is an absolutely interesting time. And now it's like we're starting to see from a public policy perspective, from an organizational perspective, from a governance perspective, like that's one of the things that's actually hardest to keep up with, is understanding where things are right now, where they're going to be in the short and midterm, and what they're going to look like in the long term. I'm just interested as a CTO that, obviously technology falls under your remit. How do you balance those things just from a governance perspective? What you can say, what you can't say? Do you have to change every other week? Like, how do you manage this?
No, we early on, about 3 years ago, when we saw the real Gen AI explosion just starting, we sat down. When I say we, I mean me and my CISO, right? We needed to do this safely, securely, with a framework. And we sat down and we said, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to set up to do this? And we started with our initial framework, and we've kept developing it. We're not changing it. We're not ripping it out and putting in a new framework. We are just having it evolve as the technology evolved. But to your point, we're literally in a world where you feel like you're driving a car and the pavement is being laid out right a couple of feet in front of you sometimes. And so we're having to sit down, and when something like you said, co-work, a new feature comes out in co-work, we're exploring co-work. We're trying to figure out how we can do it safely, how we can turn the right features on and encourage folks. We're using AI to keep track of AI with it right now, because it is changing so fast.
It's an incredible time. I mean, it's exciting. To your point, just like with the pandemic, there are certainly going to be winners and losers, right? And it feels like the variance between the companies that win and lose has never been higher, and maybe never faster in terms of kind of demarcating who that's going to be. We see a lot going on from a software perspective in terms of some of the biggest legacy companies are definitely taking hits, when it comes to stock market price. But also, I think that some of these companies have so much capital, have so much of a war chest, have been so innovative in the past, particularly the founder-led ones, that, I don't know if this is a blip on the radar or if this is something that is going to carry on for time, or something in the middle. And to your point about H.I.G, like during the pandemic, when it came to the remote work and the hybrid workforce that have, it's the companies that embrace these changes and see these changes and have a little bit of foresight around how to implement policy, how to implement different ways to make sure you're riding the wave rather than getting crashed by the wave. Those are ultimately the companies that are going to be successful. Like, you can look at my organization, and there's videos of back in 2017, 2018, stumping and saying, being in the office is so important. This is how you get visibility early in your career. This is how we better collaborate in culture. And I think it's a detriment to work remote for your career. And then the pandemic happened, and then we didn't have an option otherwise. And I had to realize that all the things that I did in terms of like bumping into people and getting a temperature check on them, or collaborating on development with a higher employee, these are things that we had to start to be more intentional about from a remote perspective. And then to your point, we're on a hybrid schedule now too. And I can't even imagine going back to a 5 days a week, 9 to 5 type schedule. And it just goes to show that, hopefully as we learn and we mature and grow as organizations, that we can make the right decisions, because ultimately that's what it is as a leader, It's about making decisions for a large group of people. And that doesn't mean every individual is going to be always happy with those choices. But you want to make sure that you're looking out for the collective and the public. And so that's what another thing I want to get into with you, the people aspect. I mean, you are a chief technology officer. We're talking about how important AI is. We're going to come back to that, but you're a people first.
Yeah, look, exactly. I mean, you don't, it's about having a team. It's about developing that team. And a team is people, and I really don't care what, when you talk about AI, it's going to replace, it's going to do, you're still going to have people in the loop. You're still going to have people there. And so you need to build your teams. You need to educate your teams. You need to empower your teams, and that means that sometimes you need to allow them to fail, right? You need to give them that safe space to fail. On our AI journey, we tried quite a few tools in the beginning. Some were fantastic, some were not, but we learned so much in those early times where the tool just wasn't really what we needed, and people were a part of that. We have to, we've been over the journey that we've had at H.I.G. It's been about giving people the ability to grow and nurturing them. And if they grow and develop and they end up leaving our organization because for whatever reason there wasn't another spot for them, they outgrew the organization. Fantastic. That's a success for the organization as well. I value the folks that have worked for me that I consider to be H.I.G. alumni as much as I value my employees, because we still talk to them. We still interact with them. When we have job openings, they're the ones referring people to come in and say, you should interview there. So, this is a journey. Sometimes a journey is a 20-year journey staying at H.I.G. to work. Sometimes it's 5 years and you're here, but in that journey, you make the person, you allow the person to be better. And there's no greater joy in that, to watch sometimes these kids that come in and you watch them mature into these amazing technology professionals, business professionals that understand the business and really help be value added, not only to the technology function, but to the business overall.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think one of the things that, is really important, and it's obviously that you take being a leader very intentionally in the way that you communicate. I'm curious. I want to know, I have to imagine that within even the group of people that you manage, there are some people that have more skepticism about AI or maybe fear. And then there's some of it that might be more optimistic. How do you message either individually or to the organization about where H.I.G. stands, what you're doing, where this is going to be empowering them? Like, how do you communicate that? Because I know there's probably a lot of people listening to this that are struggling with that.
Yeah. So what we did, earlier this year, as we're trying to do our enablement, right, which is really make AI accessible to everybody. And I need everybody at the firm, all levels, all functions, is I went on a roadshow, a virtual roadshow with each of the departments and gave 30 minutes of my time to walk them through GenAI 101. But it was more about starting with the statement of this is a tool. This is a technology that's here to make your job better, to make you better. And I opened with, everyone's concerned about their job being potentially negatively impacted by AI or losing their job. And the key messaging I gave is that you may not be replaced by AI, but you will definitely be replaced by someone who is using AI. So to really embrace it, and it's there about making the first level of it is have AI get rid of the drudgery of your work. Those things that you do that are just not value added, but you have to do them and learn from that. And we encourage our employees to use it, not only for themselves, but even in their personal life, use it. The more they use it, the more it becomes part of their skill set. And so we've had some good success with that, where it's really taken that anxiety. We haven't eliminated it completely, but we've really brought it down to where folks are really engaging, and they're coming up with some really innovative ways to use the tools.
So play that forward, because every organization might look at this a little bit differently, right? Some are seeing it as an opportunity to maximize profitability. Others are looking at it like it seems like you are, where people are being empowered to make AI more accessible, right, and leverage it to get more productivity out of it. Where do you see things kind of shaking out over the next 5 years when we look at things a little bit more macro?
5 years to today feels like, ask me what's going to happen, 50 years from now,
Sure,
because of the way things are moving. But the reality is there is going to be a redistribution of labor, a redistribution of employees and what they're doing. There may be some roles that are going to be eliminated. That is a fact. We can't stick our head in the sand and say, oh, we want to have certain roles eliminated. But there's other roles that are being created, new opportunities. The other day, I was talking to a gentleman graduating college, and I was talking about the concept we've been hearing, which is those forward deployed engineers.
Yep.
That role, that role didn't exist a few years ago.
Nope.
Nobody knew what it was. And so there's an example of where we're creating new work streams, new roles. We've seen AI in some of our portfolio companies create new products, open up new things. So it's an opportunity, and there's going to be a shifting of it, but you need to put yourself in the winner's seat by embracing it, learning it. Ignoring it isn't going to get you into that winner's seat.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, there is going to be, it's disingenuous to think that there isn't going to be short-term disruption. I tend to agree with what you just said. And I think people miss this, is that a lot of the things that will be displaced, whether it be tasks in a specific role or roles altogether, are going to be the work that was commoditized, was transactional, was not purposeful. That I like to think that the work is going to go up to a higher level. And now that XYZ is being taken care of by agents, by AI, the things that we hopefully love, the things that we're really good at, the things where our H.I.G kind of lines up, I feel like is going to be a lot more work. And then to your point, I do think that, Siobhan's paradox, where I think there's absolutely an opportunity for things are going to grow, right? There's going to be new applications. There's going to be new types of roles. To your point on the forward deployed engineers, I would say over the last 60 days, that's the role that our company, from a recruitment perspective, has had the most success, putting into organizations. And that's something that, 6 months to a year ago, we didn't even know what that was. And now we've been able to kind of pivot and show, right, the opportunity to work with this specific skill set. One of the other things I wanted to ask you is that, I think, go back to the internet. Okay. The internet is ubiquitous to everything everybody does in any facet in the company, right? And a CMO has to understand digital marketing, right? A financial leader needs to understand, in the cloud to be able to manage all their different finances and, investments and all these different things. It's like infrastructure into every role that exists out there. And yet what I see with a lot of companies right now, and it sounds like you have a big part of the AI remit underneath your scope, is that these are things that in the future that we're not going to have a technology person coming in to show marketing how to do it or to show finance how to do it. It's just going to be native to the way that those roles perform and function, right? Going forward, right? It's going to be part of the piping of everything that we do. And it's going to have segments with every function that are just part of how that job exists in the future. I think it's probably going to take a little bit of time to get there. That's why you see a lot of companies hiring chief AI officers, and there's these forward deployed engineers, and there's AI being implemented. I still see it as technology's responsibility. But do you agree with me that over time that this will just become completely universal and ubiquitous and part of everybody's day-to-day job, and won't necessarily be looked at as something that technology owns for an organization? Or do you think that it just depends on the company, or that actually technology will and still should own it?
I can't talk for every company out there. I can just talk about the ones that I've had interaction with and ourselves. We have chosen in my organization, the role of the CTO, the CIO is evolving more so than ever. It's changing as fast. And I view it as me partnering with the different groups, because AI is already embedded in our groups. We've made the technology available with ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic. We've enabled it for our users. It's there. So my role now as a technology is to enable, is to really sit there and partner and meet them where they're at. We have some groups that are really starting to develop their own new processes or re-engineer their processes with these tools. And they're reaching a point where they need our help, our technical help, to get them that last mile, that last 20% to really deploy something. And then we want to turn around and make sure it's deployed safely. Now, there's other groups that have the great ideas, but they don't have the technical AI enablement skills yet. So we're facilitating that. One of the great things just happened is, and I really believe in this, any organization, it needs to be top down if you're going to enable AI. And we recently, this is out, there's several press releases. We recently had a new CEO come on board who's been with us for 30 plus years. So he's now someone from the outside. He understands our culture. And one of his first directives was about AI. He said, we're going to train our staff. He said, we're going to go out and we're going to do enablement. We're going to provide training to our staff. He's making that investment in the company and the staff for training to do it, because you just can't throw these tools out and say, oh, they'll learn it. So we are building our enablement by design, not by accident with it. And I think that is I think what's going to make the difference for companies that a year from now, 2 years from now, really start seeing, they look back and they say, wow, we've really come a long way. we're seeing the value. I think it's that top-down leadership that really gets it done.
Yeah, and listen, I'm going to tell you this from my own personal experience. Like, probably about 7, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, maybe even a full year ago, I took the responsibility of, I had to understand this technology at a hands-on level. I was doing vibe coding. I was learning how I could work with, different data models and which ones are the best for our company, what the capabilities were. As soon as Claude came out or Cowork came out, I started using that really early on, started looking at kind of the Teams programs. Like, to me, we want to be out in front of this wave that's happening. We want to be seen as the de facto firm in the talent space when it comes to all thing AI, from the AI perspective. And so I had to lead by example. And because I got knowledgeable about it, I was able to kind of deploy, right, within our organization, kind of a center of excellence for AI among different functions and leaders, having individuals kind of get the use cases out of it. And then as we learned use cases that were really working and we could deploy consistently, we now move those across the function. And so we're not where we want to be just yet. But that was really important, that rather than if I said, hey, listen, everybody, here's kind of our blanket policy, and I just know we need to use AI, because that's what's happening with a lot of leadership right now. Hey, we need AI. The board's telling us we need AI. Go make AI happen. It's like, well, wait a minute. I knew it was important to be hands-on from the beginning. But I also have seen that from some levels, as long as you have a governance structure in place and you put global rules in place, bottoms up can work too, because we've had some people, and that's what's happening in a lot of companies, and people don't realize, and that's one of the biggest threats and risks, I believe, is that people are going to be using AI one way or another. That people realize it's almost like a steroid for your work in terms of getting more productivity and getting more things done. And so as an organization, you want to have that visibility and transparency, but still allow for that creativity. And so I think that's kind of the balance that goes back and forth. I took kind of a top-down approach, but I've also seen, we got some ideas and some wins based on people bringing in and saying, hey, we haven't seen this technology before. Maybe we should be implementing this, or maybe we should be using this. So it's still so early. The problem with, I made the comparison to the internet earlier, but the thing that's interesting to me is that with the internet, we had time, right? Because you remember AOL dial-up, and you remember the buffering, and you remember things dropping off. And so it allowed us as a society and a workforce to kind of catch up to what the internet's capabilities were, which brings us to today. That's not happening right now. The growth with AI is absolutely insane. Like we talked about earlier, about new releases every week and new capabilities all the time. It's almost staggering to keep up with. So that's where there's just so much to come. And like you said earlier, 5 years feels like 50 years from now. It's impossible to predict. But gosh, it's exciting. I wouldn't want to be around in technology in any other time.
Exactly. It's no 2 weeks are the same anymore. No 2 days are the same. A great point that you talked about, that bottom up approach is really taking that cross pollination. You've got, like you said, you're seeing it across different functions, understanding what they're doing, what they're having success in one function. That idea, you can take that and say, oh, we can use that. We can use that over here at this other function, and really start doing that cross pollination. We're trying to do it. I don't know if we do it the best way, but that has really been very successful. We learn how to do on one function. We take that, and there's some great features and things that we've learned. Oh, we can do this. Let's do it over here and really deploy that. And that has been fantastic. But to your, the other point you made about, this is shadow IT 2.0. If we were afraid about people before bringing things in they weren't supposed to, this is, as you said, on steroids. It is so easy to go ahead and bring these things in. And we made a decision early on. We were going to have a strong cybersecurity policy against it. And we block a lot of things. But I can't tell you no and not give you an alternate path. And that, I think, really is a success. So we early on said, okay, you want to use GenAI? We're going to give you the tools. They're going to be properly configured. They're going to be within our governance. And we're going to give you that facilitation. Because if you are the Department of No, people are going to find a way around it. They're going to go to it. It's out there.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
Listen, there's absolutely risks, right? But it can be a limiting factor to not explore and understand these things from a creativity perspective. And you might lose talent otherwise. Like, when we hear about people talking about, well, what's my token budget if I come to your company, or what am I going to be able to use them? This is now a benefit in this world to be able to use these tools. And here's why. I think it's because that higher level work is where everybody wants to be in their job. I'm the CEO and founder of my company. And you would not be surprised to know that at least 25% of what I have to do sucks and is shit. And I don't want to do it, right? And so the faster I can get a capability to take care of that better than I can, and I can focus on the things that I think are unique and innate to me as a leader, the better it's going to be. And I think one of the biggest gaps, and we kind of alluded to this a little bit, is that when it comes to using it in your day-to-day work, I think the biggest problem that I see, both, in myself and then obviously with organizations that we work with, is like somebody will use it and be like, dude, look at this cool use case I got right here. Look at this. This is amazing. Look at this output. We did this. And then they won't use it that way again, or they won't use it. The person next to them won't use it that way. There's a lack of consistency thing. And what I see is AI, in a lot of cases, still this one-off, what I did with AI, this is amazing. And yet we're not able to deploy that into any type of consistent output. Now, with manifest files, with skills, with connectors, with all these different things that exist out there, we can start to build a little more consistency there. But that's really the operationalizing of AI that I think is still a gap for a lot of companies, particularly some of the small and medium businesses and early enterprise companies we work with, that I think is a big opportunity. And I think if somebody can figure that out from an operator perspective, Lord knows there's a lot of people trying to do it right now. I think that's a big opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know what the right model to do it is, but we are experimenting. We are trying with that. We are, to your point, we're collecting skills. We're publishing skills. We're communicating. We are maybe over communicating. Sometimes we'll find the right cadence over time, but making sure that the true value is in the repeatable things, and really finding these skills that our staff can use to remove the mundane, the mind-numbing tasks in a repeatable, consistent fashion, so they're not doing it anymore. So that everyone is doing it. And you're exactly right. Skills have been fantastic. To sit there and take something and just turn it to a skill, and then someone can just run it real well, real great. And the feedback we get, I mean, we have our users. This is not an IT-driven solution at this point. This is a democratized, user-driven set of wins that are coming into us. And folks are proud of what they're doing. They're bringing it into it. And we're saying, well, how do we turn this into a firm-wide win? How do we take this and spread it out? And once people get that, I can be part of the solution that's going to get recognition across the firm. You'd be surprised what things start to bubble up with it. And it's they become part of the whole solution set to it. And we're doing that with our portfolio companies. We are going and we are pushing into them. We are enabling with them the whole AI experience. And it's not that I'm involved. We actually have a core group of, we call them operating partners, that go out and work with our portfolio companies in different capacities, whether it's on finance, whether it's on procurement, marketing. We've got, we're building out now an AI team to do that, because we're in the middle market. So we've got some really small portfolio companies, some large ones. They all need this help so that we can cross-pollinate from what we know, from what our 120 portfolio companies know, what things can work. And we're in a lot of different sectors. But what's great is a win in a healthcare portfolio company, things you learn, you can take that to a manufacturing, because there are some things that are, AP is AP. And you can go ahead and bring some of those wins across, and then they can fine tune it for themselves. And that's exciting. I mean, I learned when I talk to my peer CFO, CTOs, CIOs at the portfolio companies, I learn as much as I tell them. Sometimes in a selfish way, I learn more.
You have a super unique vantage point. Very few CEOs have the ability to see this many different industries, different many sizes of companies, different types of CIOs and CTOs. Like usually, and most people are going to be very industry dependent, right? Or even if it's a certain portfolio or thesis dependent. And you've got this like really broad view of how AI is impacting all these different industries. It has to be both overwhelming and exciting at the same time, I imagine.
It's more exciting than overwhelming. Early on in my tour at H.I.G here, it was a little overwhelming because we did not have this group of, as I mentioned, these operating professionals. So we were getting a lot of the inbounds into my group, and we helped as much as we could. And now with this group that we have that is really going out and doing value creation and really helping and supporting and nurturing our portfolio company, I'm a little bit more in the catbird seat, but I'm still getting all the benefit. I mean, these dialogues, these conversations, these problem solving. I mean, I have a personal network of 120 CIOs or technology leaders that I can call upon anytime and say, hey, I'm having this issue or I have this idea. What do you think? And that is just, it's great. It's fantastic. I'm spoiled.
What a fantastic opportunity, and good for you on that. Last thing I wanted to ask you about before we move into the hiring aspect, mentorship is something that seems like it's been key to your career. Sounds like you probably had some great mentorship, but it's also something that you think is really important as your role as a leader. I'm interested. What's the ROI you get on that? And I don't want to make it a cost plus type situation. I just want to know, like, have you noticed the amount of impact you can have by taking time out of the day to day and spending time with people and helping them get to a different level? And maybe you have a story of a situation where you did just that and you got outsized returns for it.
Listen, absolutely. This is not has there been a return? Could there be? Absolutely. Every minute that I invest in my staff at all levels, and not just my staff, I will sometimes partner with someone in another department who may not be my peer. Maybe I'm working on a project and it's someone who's several levels below me, but we develop a relationship and I understand what they're doing, and I'll give them some process advice or even say, oh, we can go ahead and we have some tools here. Put in a request for copy me and I'll facilitate and help that person through the process. I mean, watching, as I said earlier, watching these people just develop and grow from someone that came in an entry level position or a mid level position and watching them grow. I mean, again, I will selfishly say in that mentoring, I developed these relationships, these partnerships of these folks where I learned. That's why I've learned a lot about the H.I.G business in that. Building all those bridges that are really bi-directional. It's not just what am I getting out of it? What can I do? And then people will come and talk to you about opportunities, not problems, not crisis, but opportunities. Hey, I noticed this, and I think maybe we can find a technology solution. And as we all know, right, all problems are people, process, and technology. And when you have people involved and they want to talk about the processes, the technology part is easy. That's just work. But you really get to a solution. And a solution is all three of those pillars. And if you control those and you manage those, it's just amazing.
All right, Luis, that was excellent. I am excited. We've been talking people, we've been talking technology. Let's bring these worlds together. Let's talk a little bit about hiring for you and for H.I.G. So I want to start here. Do you, and you've been doing this for a long time, so I'm just interested. Do you have a core hiring philosophy for people that you want to bring into your organization, or maybe somebody that you want to bring into the portfolio? What's kind of a core hiring philosophy that you abide by?
So I've always looked when there's first in our hiring process, there's the whole technical review. Does the person have the right skills and stuff, and usually that'll get filtered by someone who interviews before me. I'm usually involved in looking for those things you can't teach, right? What I look for is a sense of urgency. We've actually called it an H.I.G sense of urgency, a passion, right? I can't teach someone the sense of urgency. I can't teach someone to be passionate. Those things have to be there. I can nurture all of those, someone who's, and then the last piece is really intellectual curiosity, because that's a lifelong journey. If you have someone who's intellectually curious, they can learn anything. And they can learn from their mistakes. They can learn whether it's technical matter, whether it's business matter, right? Because I really want people that are interested, because I don't want a shop of 50 technology professionals that all they care about is technology and they don't want to learn about the more they learn about the business, the better business technology professionals they are, and the better they can troubleshoot, the better they can understand what the problem is. Because the problem is not always technology. The problem is a business issue that the technology is not aligned. And so to come back and say, oh, here's what's going on. And even some of my service desk analysts, the ones that have those traits, they'll come with some really innovative ideas to say, oh, look, I know we've been using this, but I think maybe we have the wrong tool, or maybe the configuration, the limitations that we've put in are no longer valid. So they really learn early on to be part of that loop. But you have to really see that in the hiring process to it. And the other thing I've learned is you got to be patient. When you're hiring, you have to, it might take you longer than you want, but you got to be willing to wait to find the right person, because every time I've given into the rush of like, I just need to fill the role. more often than not, at some point, it just comes back to just say, I shouldn't have done that. And that I've had to coach my staff underneath me. Just, okay, you haven't found someone, just wait, keep looking, keep interviewing. It's better to hire the right person than hire the wrong person.
Okay, put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Let's talk about those kind of three qualities. You said sense of urgency, passion, and intellectual curiosity. Are there any questions that you like to ask in an interview to try to get to the bottom of that you can identify those?
It's not any specific question. It's usually in the dialogue as you go down the path. I'll talk about what they've done before, where they're at. You can get a sense of it from understanding why they're leaving or why we're having the conversation. I always like to ask, sounds like you have a great resume. It sounds like you've done some great things. Why are we having a conversation? And really, as they start to answer that question, you really start to get a sense for, they're leaving because they want a better challenge, right? And I always want to understand, is that really what your answer, or is that you're just giving me what you've been told to answer? And dig into some of those to get below the surface to it. And then the passion part will come about understanding, as you asked me, why did I get into this early on, is understanding what they do on their off time. What do they do? Are they a tinkerer? If they're tinkering with technology, they probably have a passion for it. Or sometimes it might be someone that they tinker a little bit, but they love to do home repair, which means problem solve, and so really trying to understand someone that really just these intangibles are just a pattern for them, even if they don't realize it.
Love that. If I asked you to think of a memorable interview experience, either a good one, bad one, you were interviewing, somebody was interviewing you, whatever it is, any memorable interview experiences come to mind?
Yeah. So before I came to H.I.G, when I was interviewing, I had not interviewed for a bit of time, and I took an interview with a technology company, and I didn't go as prepared as I should have, and I tried to wing it, and it was disaster. It was a Class A disaster from start to finish. And I walked out of there knowing that I just did not do a good job. And I said to myself, that will never happen again. And to this day, when I walk into a meeting, when I walk into something, if I get the sense that I'm not prepared, I think back to that memory, that feeling, because I've made sure to hang on to it and say, I don't want to repeat that.
Love that. Wow. Yes. We'll always have these moments of deep life lessons that stick with us forever. And it sounds like that one, you learned that the separation is in the preparation, and you didn't want to be caught in that situation again. I love that. What about, and you've been super prepared for our podcast, so I got to say that it's carried over even when you come to the podcast. I love that. What about, so let's go back to what you said. I always like to ask people when you miss, right? Because we all miss, right? On hiring people, what's kind of a common theme? Sounds like, and this is to me probably the number one reason for most people, is that, hey, we want to fill the role. We got to get the headcount in, it's strapping our team. It's a gap. And then you start making, you don't even realize it might be conscious or subconscious rationalizations or concessions. Is that the number one thing that you think that you've throughout your career has been the number one indicator of bad hiring?
Yeah, that you really hit it the nail on the head, because it's happened. So we'll usually try to do a quick postmortem when a role doesn't work out. And we always come back to where we make concessions. We negotiated against ourselves because we let we have to fill it. And we go back and say, well, if you look back on the notes, we saw that this person didn't really have this or didn't have that, or someone in the interview process questioned, oh, is this person really have a sense of urgency? Or, you just start making concessions. And we try to learn from that. I'm not going to say that it's human nature. You're going to let some of those things go in. But we've really tried to make it a point of, if one of my reports comes in and trying to hire someone, as I ask them, well, why? And I start getting that feeling of, you're kind of trying to make too many allowances for it. There is no perfect candidate, but there needs to be a good candidate. And if they're not at least a good candidate, I'm going to push back.
And where their deficiencies are have to be ones that you feel either okay with, or that you feel like can improve or change in your environment. And there's certain things that just have to be deal breakers. And we always know, if you actually do a diligent job in the interview process, taking notes, getting team buy-in, you look at all the feedback, and something was wrong with the candidate, right? You can always look back and there was some sort of sign in the interview that you either ignored or didn't listen to, or tried to, like you said, paint with a shiny gloss coat, even when it didn't demand it. So
Yeah, so look, you can make concessions for, oh, someone doesn't have a certain technical expertise because they haven't been exposed to it, but their track record shows that they've learned it, that they have some adjacent technical skills. Like, hey, we can train that, we can invest in the person and do that, and that's okay. But when you start having just stuff that you realize right away, they're not going to be a cultural fit, they're not going to have these intangibles. You really can't change that.
How do you get candidates, especially the ones that like they've gone through the process, gotten to you, so you're probably pretty interested in the candidate. How do you get them to understand what it's like to work with you and work at H.I.G? How do you create a realistic job preview for them to understand what they'd be walking into? Because it's just as important that they understand what they're getting into just as much as you getting the right person, right?
I usually, my interviews is towards my interview style is I'm either towards the beginning and the end, or just at the end. At that end interview, part of it, I try to scare them off a little bit subconsciously. I try to be very transparent. I tell them, I've been here a long time. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is a fantastic firm. It's great. You'll have a lot of opportunity, but you got to work hard. Right. So I really, I almost try to scare them off. I've never, by the time we get to, I've never scared anyone off where they're like, oh no, forget it. The CTO just scared me. I don't want this. But I try to be very, very transparent. And then what I like to do when someone starts, I try to check in with them at the 1 week and the 2 week mark. And I ask them 2 questions. What's the one positive thing that surprised you coming in here that you would not have expected? And then the other thing is, what surprised you in a negative fashion? What really you weren't expecting that was bad? Because I really want that feedback before you've been here too long, and use that as a feedback mechanism. Hey, maybe we weren't transparent enough with the candidate. I really want, I tell my staff, candidate needs to come in day one, eyes wide open, and we should have done a really good job of painting what the world is here.
Luis, you and I are two peas in a pod. I always meet with a new hire after the first week, kind of like a get to know the CEO check-in. We've had 2 start the last 2 Fridays, right? So I've had that happen, or the last 2 Mondays, and I talked to them on Friday. Both times, I always ask, what's something that's positively surprised you? What's something that's negative surprised you? What feedback do you have for me on our training and onboarding, right? Because I think you're going to get hopefully some real unvarnished truth, right? So I love that. Last question for me on the hiring side. Have you found a technology, or is there any technology that you leverage that has enhanced either the candidate experience, your experience, or are you pretty old school when it comes to, taking notes or using, an ATS or CRM? What's kind of your technology of choice when it comes to hiring?
For me personally, notes, still, old school notes. I don't like to use an AI note taker when I'm interviewing. I think it puts the candidate, I want to put the candidate at ease, and I think there's a recording or something. I think that will change as that becomes more the norm, but I want the candidate to be at ease. We do use a lot of AI in terms of when we have our stack of resumes that's been watered down, that's been bubbled down, distilled to here's the 10 good candidates. We will use some of the AI to go ahead and summarize the resumes, do a fit against the stuff. I try not to have that be the sole driver to it. I'm still a little bit, again, people oriented, a little old fashioned. I love it when I get a resume that I read through it and something will catch my eye and I'll be like, I want to talk to this person. And some of my most notable hires are ones where I saw the resume, I picked it out and I said, this person just looks like someone I want to talk to. And that's what will just connect. You still have to, your gut has to drive the hiring to a degree.
Love that. Love that. Don't disagree. I think there's technology out there that can enhance that experience, right? Rather than replace it and automate it. But I agree with you. I'm the same. I build technology in this space. So I'm trying to make it more human centric, but I agree with you. Like we joke around, like when I was a recruiter and I started my career in technology, then I moved into executive recruitment. I remember like when I would first open up the resume before I'd actually ever kind of like seen their full work experience, and you would see it and you're like, oh, this is the perfect person, or the excitement you would get to find out about how an interview went, or to really, even interviewing people in my own company. Like I still get joy and passion. I guess this is why I made this my life. And this is something that I enjoy because I'm kind of crazy like that, but I'm totally with you. I love the connection of people. I love getting to know people better. In some ways it's kind of speed dating. In some ways it's kind of like relationship building and ecosystem building. And for me, I get a lot out of it because I never get tired of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the advice I give to my direct hires, right? The one time you should be the most excited about someone is when they're starting. If you're not excited about that, I mean, that you have to be like, wow, I'm really excited. This person's going to make a difference. If you don't feel that, you may not have the right person.
Not only that, I always tell people that, and this is harsh, but like, you'll know in 30 days. You'll know. Whatever you bring in 30 days, you're almost never right on that long term, because you have enough information at that point to know this person's going to fit in culturally. They have the capability to do this. And that's not to say people can't improve, but we have a gut sense of like what works in our organization, especially if you've been there for a while. And, sometimes I've had to push myself and say, you know what, even as somebody that professes to be an expert in this space and cares deep about it, I get it wrong too. And you got to make sure you have to know you're doing a disservice to the person if you're just trying to, play out the string or not have that hard conversation. So
That if at that 30-day mark, you still feel happy, you still feel charged as a person, they're only going to get better.
I made a hire, one of the most important positions I've ever hired. And I told myself, I heard that about halfway through the interview process. I'd read it somewhere and I was like, okay, well, this is going to be a real litmus test right here, because this is a really important hire and I got to get this one right. And I remember 30 days in, I put an invite on my calendar and I just asked myself, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel fantastic. And you know what? 2 years later, I still feel fantastic. So that is a litmus test. All right, a couple more questions, then we're going to get to our speed round. Tell me a personal use case of AI that you're using that's just improved your personal life.
Personal use of AI. It's a really silly one, but it's early on when I wanted to validate it. And I tell people this all the time. They're like, really? You can take a pool test kit, dump it in the pool, hold it to a camera, take any of the AI tools and tell me how my pool's doing. And it tells you all the chemical readings, because those are all industry standard. I didn't know that. So all of a sudden it's like, wow, this, and I use that story all the time to show people it can help you in the littlest thing, but you put it up there. It's like, wow. On the personal side, going through my inbox and just summarizing threads. We're an email intensive company. It's not unheard of for me to have a 30 message thread.
Are you Gmail or Outlook?
We're Outlook.
So you're not using Claude or Cowork, or using a different connector?
Claude. We are a Claude and a ChatGPT.
I just got the Outlook for Claude. I think it's only been out for a little while. We're going to catch up on that. And by the way, the pool example is exactly why I asked this question, because everybody's got like a really unique thing that I love that. Hey, somebody just heard that who's got a pool that's filthy and they're like, oh man, I never knew that. They're going to run to their Claude or their ChatGPT next time.
Well, I'll give you a side story on that where it's really valuable. My brother's colorblind. So when he looks at the pool stick, he can't really tell. So when I did it to him, he goes, oh my God, this is life-changing.
Life-changing. I love that. No longer swimming in green pools, which we're both in South Florida. We're not. What's the last good book that you'd recommend for our listeners, or even if it's another piece of content?
I'm a big audiobook guy.
Okay.
I take advantage of the long rides. John McCain's last autobiography. I just loved it. Hearing, the stories, it really, there's a course I took at Harvard, the art of negotiation. And that book plays into it, where you can have this really complicated relationship, contentious, but you need to land someplace, and which is the art of negotiation, because you need to come back to that person. And there's tons of stories in there where he talks about his days as a senator and just having these drag out fights with the other senators. And then when they're done, they go to the bar and have a few drinks.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I am. He's a war hero. I believe he was a prisoner of war, senator.
Yep.
Ran for president, and from the great state of Arizona, my home state. So I'm a big John McCain guy. I love that. I want to check that out. All right, last question for our speed round. What's some advice, Luis, that you'd give your 20-year-old self that you didn't know then that you know now?
So, and I think I mentioned it early on. Whatever you want to do career-wise, you need to be passionate about it. You need to love it, because if you follow the money, if you follow the money initially, and the passion is not there when you're having to work the 80-hour work week. At least if you're in technology, you have a crisis and you do 80 hours in a week or something, you're not going to have fun. I'll tell you, I'm in the middle of a crisis and I might go 4 hours to sleep a night for a week. But when I'm done, I'll sit back and I'll go, that was fun. That was cool. And if you can't enjoy it, when the job is hard, then you're in the wrong career. And if you want to do it for a long time, it's the only way to enjoy it.
So one of my favorite thought leaders, I guess is the best way to put it, Naval Ravikant says, what feels like play to you, but work to others? That's what you pursue. So love that. Same page. Nailed that. Let me ask you a couple questions. You're down here in South Florida, in Miami, right?
Yep.
How long have you been here?
I've been here most of my adult life. I've been here since.
Okay. So you're on the board for Goodwill Industries of South Florida. Why do you do that? What does that give you?
So that was about giving back, right? So I've got all these years of technical experience going up through the ranks, and Goodwill, their mission is an amazing mission. They are not just about the clothes you donate. You go out there, you see the clothes donate. It's not about that. They have an entire organization to go ahead and employ people that are typically not employed at times. People that may have certain issues in terms of medical conditions that are not employable in the traditional sense. So they find work for them in their factory building. They build, they go ahead and sew Army uniforms to DoD standards. Okay, it's amazing. Flags for the veterans. So if you ever attend a veteran funeral, they'll drape a flag over the casket. They sew those flags for it, and to a precision that you will never see. So it is really about helping people help themselves, and it's just an amazing organization. And so getting involved with them, I've been able to help them drive their technology function, their cyber function. I also sit on their audit committee, so I get to use some of my business acumen with it, and it's just a great, rewarding experience.
I love that. All right, we're going to go in a little bit of a different direction. What's your favorite restaurant in South Florida?
Luca Astoria in Coral Gables. It's an Italian restaurant, Italian food. It's amazing.
Okay, I got a lunch down in Coral Gables. I was going to Rose Steakhouse. Are you thinking I should change up my?
You will never have a bad meal there.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite part about living in South Florida?
I don't have to deal with snow.
Me too. God, we have New York offices, Chicago offices, and I'm always talking to people who are freezing their butts off. And I've got this view. So I feel like I'm actually like trolling people half the time, especially in the winter when they look out and they see degrees.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I grew up in Jersey originally, so I know snow, and I'll probably eventually go back and live in the Northeast, which is fun. It'll be different. But at least the claim to fame, every time I'm on a call, say, so what's the temperature over there? So at some point, it'll be paid back to me in spades.
For sure. When you call me, when you make that move, I'll let you know, because I'm going to be here for. What's your favorite sports team down here?
The Miami Hurricanes.
Okay. So football, love basketball, everything, all things to you.
So Hurricanes for football. And then I'm a Duke alum. So Duke basketball for college.
So I went to the University of Arizona. We are not Duke fans over there in terms of our basketball program. We did just draft Carson Beck. I'm a big Cardinals fan. Is Carson Beck going to be a good NFL player?
We'll see.
Oh man, killing me. All right, last question. Have you bought an Inter Miami Luis Suarez jersey yet? Yes or no?
No, I have not, but I get calls all the time when he, a few years back when he was doing all these notable things like biting someone's ear and doing all that. I would get calls all the time and texts from all my friends harassing me.
You know what? When you first reached out and we started to schedule the pod, I thought for a minute that I had a soccer player, but you know what? It turned out even better. We met the CTL of H.I.G Capital. We really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
All right, talk to you.